everybody. I'm Kirsten Marcel, author and adventure into history. I write the Revolutionary War fantasy saga, The Enlightened, and we are here at the gathering of the Accidental Time Travelers. I am very pleased to be your moderator today. You can see we have a bunch of authors here, as well as some audience for this recording. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I am also the editor for the Accidental Time Travelers Collective. I have been for all three. And so I thought the best way for us to introduce our authors is I'm actually going to, throughout this presentation and our conversation, going to read a selection from each person's story. And everybody in our audience, our authors, are going to try to guess whose story I am reading from. So is everybody ready?
Yes.
All right. Our first one goes like this. They touched me without leaving an impression, and the ice-cold six-packs some of them carry tucked against their sides transfer no goose pimples to my arms. They breathe, but my cheeks don't feel the flutter. They sweat, but they don't stink. I wave a hand in front of the shooter, but he doesn't bat an eye. Whose story is it? Any guesses?
Wait, sounds like Josh.
That's Ghost.
It is Josh. So everybody please welcome Josh Bellin. He is going to introduce himself and tell us a quick blurb about his story.
Well, yeah, thanks people for being here. And this is very exciting to see the Accidental Time Travelers Collective gathered together. And we've got authors from really all three volumes here, which is super awesome. So yeah, I'm Josh Bellin. The story that Kirsten read from was Ghost Life, which is in the third volume. I've got a story in each of the three. I've also written a novel, Myriad, in the third, which is a time travel novel, and my story in the third is a prequel short story to Myriad. And I guess I'm the guy who kind of had the idea to put together these volumes. Julie, who is here, was the one who started the Time Travel Authors hashtag on a previous program that shall go unnamed. And it has migrated to various other social media platforms. And now I've found a home on Blue Sky, and it's there too. And so I discovered that there were all these people. I was writing a time travel novel because I just thought it would be fun. And then it was like, wow, there's all these people who are into time travel. And I met so many of them through that hashtag. I said, what about if we put together a collection of stories? And the idea snowballed, and here we are. And 3 volumes later, we've added new people. We're all around the world. We're from all different times, right? Because, some of us are from the 18th century. Some of us are, from the 29th century. We're all over the place. So it's just really exciting to be part of this group. It's a great group of friends and great group of writers.
Thank you, Josh. And actually, Josh brings up a good point because we are from all across time. I love to play this game with authors. It's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time where I am. What other time zones are we representing today?
Mountain Standard here. So not Mountain Daylight, Mountain Standard.
Okay. What time is that?
Oh, 1 p.m.
1 p.m. What else we have?
2 p.m. in Chicago.
Not that Chicago. Okay.
Central European time, it's 9 p.m. here.
Oh my God. It's so bright and sunny for 9 p.m.
Well, that's not actually the view from my window.
Tell us really fast what it is, because it's a great view.
Okay, that's the Chateau Amboise, a royal castle, royal palace in the Loire Valley, where my stories are set.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to take us to another story. So everybody ready? I thought May 23rd was going to be just another ordinary day at Create Your Own Pizza, aka CYO-P. The kind of day where you build like 100 pizzas, you get a cool $6 in tips, and when you finally get home and take your shoes off, you somehow find half an olive inside.
That's my favorite story. That's Julie's story.
Sounds
I still
like
think about it.
Turtle Day.
Turtles.
Yep, it's Julie's.
When I
So
heard pizza,
Julie-
I'm gonna guess Julie.
Yes. Julie, you're up. Please introduce yourself. Tell us really fast what your story is.
All right, I'm Julie Bin, and my story is Turtle Day, or Kate Malone and the Magic Calzone. So it's the funniest thing I've ever written. It's about as crazy as it sounds. Literally a slacker pizza worker makes a calzone that lets her travel through time. And that's the story. That's the pitch. People like it. So, yep, that's the story.
It is. It's super fun. And so, as Josh was saying, you came up with the hashtag time travel authors. Where did that come from? And tell us a little bit about it.
So I joined the site that should not be named. I came back to it in, I guess it must have been the summer of 2022. And I saw people have hashtag games. I wanted to promote my novel, tell people about it, Titanic Voyage, and also just, just network with people, meet other people. At the time, I was thinking time travel is a genre. The more I think about it, time travel really isn't a genre, because like the Terminator is totally different from Somewhere in Time, even though they're both time travel stories. But I started the hashtag as the hashtag games people have. Back when I started, it was every day, and that was kind of too much because I like to reply to everyone's comments. So long story short, it became every other day. It's been going ever since. I'd love for people to get involved if you write time travel, if you will write time travel, like a certain author or whatever. And it's just a nice way to meet people. And I'm a pretty eclectic person, so it's lots of fun to meet all sorts of different people for me. So that's what it is.
Awesome. And it is a lot of work because I took over for Julie for 1 month, and you're so good. You were so much better than I was too, because Julie really does, answer everybody and has great conversations. I applaud you, Julie.
Thank you. And right now it's on Blue Sky and Mastodon is where I participate. I've tried a little on Facebook, never works. So that's where we're at.
Cool. So if you're, one of our audience and you're watching us and you write anything related to time travel, check those out and follow Julie, follow all of us, and join in with us. Okay, so this is a question for all of our authors. Anybody can answer. Why write time travel?
I'll jump in there. It adds another dimension. I mean, you can write in past tense and mix the times. It's just another element that's like a bonus.
It really gives you the opportunity of wish fulfillment in the same way magic does in fiction. You're able to fix things and address things that we can't in our everyday lives.
That's a great way of looking at it. For me, I love history, particularly 20th century history, and writing time travel gives me the opportunity to visit in another time period, learn about it, and have fun there. So
I want to echo Janet on that point. I really enjoy the digging into the history. I've learned a lot about times I didn't know anything about because I put my characters in them, so I had to do some research, and that's been fun.
It's a great way to present when you're doing historical as well, because you can have a character who doesn't understand what's going on, as opposed to if you write straight historical and you have to have all the characters know exactly. I can't explain to the audience because why would you explain this thing we all know? So that's a nice aspect.
For me, I was actually writing a series because I'm a huge history geek, and I wanted to be able to talk about so many different parts of history. And time travel made the most sense because you can't have continuity. Like, it's really difficult to have continuity between like Anglo-Saxon times and Mongol times, and when you're jumping 400 or 500 years at a time. So time travel, it's like, that's the solution to my dilemma of how to do books in all these different areas of time and keep it all as part of the series.
Yeah, it was definitely for me. It was a fix for a problem, which, kind of going back to what Julie had said, where I was having a hard time getting started writing Revolutionary War because I was so afraid of being wrong and historians were going to come after me. And instead, by having someone from our time thrown back, first person narration, she could be wrong all she wanted to, and then I have other people correct her in the story if I can. So for those of you who write outside time travel, or as Julie said, it's not really its own genre, it's sort of maybe a sub umbrella of genre of many bigger umbrellas. Is it harder, easier, about the same than writing other genres?
I think it's harder. because you're not only dealing with your characters and your plot, but you're having to do the history piece, or if you're setting yours in the future, developing that whole future world piece. So I think it's more complicated, and I have to do a timeline to make sure I'm not crossing dates, messing things up timeline wise. So I think it's more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with what Fenley just said. It's so convoluted. Our minds don't really work that way. I mean, we're time travelers mentally in the sense that we're always thinking about the past and imagining the future, but our bodies don't travel in time in the way that they do in these time travel stories. And figuring out, especially when you've got loops or you've got repeated scenes or you've got, multiple, whether you do a multiverse thing or not, it can just be very bewildering. And I feel like, some people like to read a time travel story to spot the errors, but there's always going to be errors. I mean, there's always going to be paradoxes. None of it really quite makes sense. So I think that's part of the fun of it, but it's also the challenge.
I just want to jump in from a serial standpoint too, because I write installments that I sort of put out onto the web on a regular basis. I don't really write the historical stuff. I don't do lots of historical research. A lot of my stuff is contemporary. And so part of it is escapism from some of the things going on right now. But the issue with that in serializing is, once an installment is out, you can't really go back and change it. That's what makes the time travel difficult, because if you want someone to travel back to the current point in the story from the future, you kind of already have to know what they were doing in the future to have arrived now. And so you sort of have to have everything laid out in advance. And in the serial format, that's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes your head hurt when you do time travel writing.
What are some of the paradoxes that make no sense to you guys when you've read them, seen them in films, and you're like, what is going on here?
Oh, geez. Nebula in the Avengers movie who kills her past self. Now, I know they did all this, oh, no, that's a multiverse Nebula killing her previous self. It's like, nah, it's just bad.
Well, I think the main problem with the Avengers thing is the guy comes to the future but then dies. So how does he go back to the past? Like what?
Yeah, and if anybody actually watched the Timeless series, that one is just filled with. I just couldn't stand.
That drove me crazy about that series, because they changed the past, and I'm a purist in the sense that if you go to the past, I may be getting ahead of the questions here, but
no, you're fine.
Go to the past, and you try to change something, you are inevitably going to make it happen, and so that's why you don't screw around with the timeline. That's in my writing. That's the way I do it. And Timeless was like the very first episode. They change it so that the Hindenburg doesn't blow up, and it's like everything changes after that. Yeah. So they keep going back in time and changing things, and it just drove me nuts.
Yeah, they were taking a chainsaw to solve like a little problem. It's like, oh, let's just get it in there.
I admit I do love that series though, because they were revisiting really interesting points in history, and change or not, that way you don't know that it's going to happen, because it still, there's still the suspense because they could change it.
And in spite of the changes, it's still surprisingly historically accurate.
Yes, they were very impressive with how much they tried to get at the truth of. I don't like using the truth with history, but the story aspects that we don't know so much, and there was a whole lot of motivation that I just thought was really cool as to why they were trying to change things and why people were trying to stop them. And yeah,
I recently read Before the Coffee Gets Cold, because it seems so popular, and there's a series about it, and I wanted to do time travel research, right? But in that book, they don't change the future or the present. They can only go back in time once, and whatever they do doesn't change the present. And that bugged the heck out of me, because I thought, well, what's the point of it? Why are you writing this book if you're not using this time travel element? So I got really frustrated by the flip side. I wanted these changes, and I didn't get the point of that whole plot of that book.
Wasn't that a Japanese author?
Yeah.
So that's like a non-Western way of looking at it, probably. Like, you know, the Japanese, you have kind of the slice of life, nothing really happens, which you also see in literary fiction. But I think it was kind of his thing. I think it was probably intentional that you can't. That it's just little vignettes of things using time travel as kind of a not. I mean, it's you know, it was weird, but it was. I think it was partly because the author was non-Western, so it wasn't meant. I think.
Funny. All right, we're
Well, I
gonna
won't be reading the sequel. Sorry, go on.
no, go ahead.
Oh, it's all.
Amanda, are you trying to talk? Because it looks like you are and you're muted. Okay. So I am going to I'm going to read another one, and then if anybody wants to pick up where we were, we can. So, ready? The man from 1756 came through next, the young bachelor from the northern regions of the New York colony, who regarded the doctors warily, as if he expected everyone from the end of the 21st century to be cannibals. Whose is it?
Isn't that Catherine's?
Think
Yeah,
it
that's first do no harm, right?
Yep. It is.
Yes.
Catherine, please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Catherine Benfanti. I'm from New Jersey. I'm although I've lived all around the U.S. and in Canada too, and I wrote First Do No Harm as a story that takes place at the turn of the next century, and as a bit of what have we done to our bodies in that 100 years. And in this story, they've just despoiled their bodies so much with things like accumulated microplastics and strip soils and such, to the point where fertility rates are so low that people have gone to desperate measures. And so there's this one government department that uses a purpose-built time machine to persuade these so-called chrono specimens to come from past eras to time travel to the present. And they think they're there for a time travel adventure, but one of the doctors, the main character, finds out that her colleagues have developed a less than ethical test plan for them to do some research on their bodies to help present tense humanity, or which is the future humanity. And so the main character is infertile herself, and she's hoping for a miracle, but she has to decide, you know, how far will she go to save humanity. A little different than what I've done before, but it was fun.
That was Catherine. That was my favorite of the book. I absolutely love that story. Thank you.
That's cool. Thanks.
It's a great story. And if I can say, you know, we were sort of talking a few minutes ago about whether time travel literature is a genre or whatever it is. You know, I think it's more kind of like a frame of mind. It's, you know, and I love, I'm not going to name any time travel stories that I don't love. And of course, I love all of them in the Time Travelers collective volumes. But, you know, sometimes I read a time travel story where I don't think the person's heart is really in it, where time travel just becomes kind of like a gimmick. I like stories like Catherine's and all of the ones that are in these volumes, where time travel is, you know, you accept it as a real thing, you as the writer, and you pour your passion into it, and interesting things happen because of it. It's not just there because, oh, you know, okay, time travel sounds fun, let's throw in some time travel. All of the stories in these volumes, time travel is integral to them. And I really think that that's, to me, that's what's appealing about it. An author who says, well, yeah, of course, this is all impossible, but if it were possible, wow, what would happen? And those are the best stories, I think.
Yeah, definitely. All right, here's another one for us. I wondered if the old time machine was still parked in our garage. Probably. A backup vehicle provided by their employer that Nat and I discovered when we were about 11 or 9 years old. Granted, it looks like a camouflage-colored Citroen 2CV, but we'd never seen Mom or Dad drive that car. The day we found it, the engine was still warm.
If you're talking about Citroen, that has to be Macon.
That's a sweet deal. And when my microphone wouldn't go on, I was actually trying to talk about how I like a time travel story that starts out innocuous and then you don't know what it's going to turn into. And I think A Sweet Deal really does that well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Megan, why don't you go ahead and take a moment and introduce yourself and your story?
Yes, hi, I'm Megan, and I live in Paris. Though my stories are always set in or around Amboise in the Loire Valley, where it's the chateau you can see in the background. And and my story, Sweet Deal, is about Quentin, who has to find a solution to save his dog because she had an accident and surgery is going to be far more expensive than his family can afford. And so it's dilemma for him because he has access to a time machine, but he's not supposed to use it to undo the accident.
Awesome. And Amanda, thank you for jumping in because I didn't want to leave you behind. Okay, so to all our authors, what other genres do you write or would you like to write?
Well, I have plans to release 2 books this year that are not time travel. They are both contemporary fiction, very character-driven stories. So I write whatever story just sort of comes to me.
I wrote a fantasy comedy, kind of like a Terry Pratchett sort of thing that never went anywhere. It actually, I gave up on it after finishing it and editing it for years and years and years and getting sick of it. And then I started my time travel series because it's like, I can't edit this dumb thing anymore. So I got to start something new. But I do have it. I don't know.
Will we ever see it? Sounds good.
I like publishers, agents, and everybody else didn't, but I liked it.
Someday.
I write urban fantasy and paranormal romance in addition to time travel.
Urban fantasy is my favorite because I'm not a high fantasy lover. Urban fantasy's got that very grounded reality that I need, but it's got that extra kick to something.
Amanda, you're on mute.
So I have an AI novella called Wishlist that I started before ChatGPT became a reality. Oh my gosh. Am I?
We have you now. Yeah.
Can you hear me now? No, I cannot. ChatGPT was a reality that just follows one woman's life as told by the shopping algorithm that she uses. And there is a time travel story in the back.
That's cool. I like that. Oh.
My next book is a haunted house book. And I recently discovered, I had a beta reader come back and say, well, I'm not sure if this book is supposed to be cozy. And I said, is cozy horror? Is that a thing? And it is a thing. And that's the genre that I enjoy reading. I don't know if anyone's read The September House. It is a fantastic book and I absolutely loved it. And I like, this is my thing, cozy horror. So horror that ends on a hopeful note, where someone overcomes something and has a positive outlook through horrible, awful things that are happening. And so the haunted house book is a ghost hunter who dies in his house and has to overcome something awful that's going on there. And it's a lot of fun. I enjoy that mixing of things.
That sounds great. I just discovered. Sorry.
Heard about.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I was going to say, I had just heard about cozy fantasy. And since I write fantasy, I was curious what that was all about. One of the titles that was recommended was Legends and Lattes. So I read that, and honestly, I found it really boring. I mean, that's the action adventure in me was just like missing. But I'm going to give it a second chance. So now I'm about to start Teller of Small Fortunes, which is supposed to be another cozy fantasy. So I'm wide open to seeing what it's all about. I'm just not sure that it's got enough action adventure for me.
Right. I listened to a podcast not very long ago with a group of authors, including Travis Baldree, who wrote Legends and Lattes. And they were talking about the criticism of cozy fantasy or anything in the cozy genre, is often that people will say nothing happens. And I think that the stakes tend to be smaller in cozy books. They're more personal stakes rather than we have to save the world. We have to save this person. We have to save this family or this town. It's much smaller. And so if you do like those big, all-encompassing fantasy kind of adventures, then cozy may not be the right genre, you know. But for me, I kind of like the smaller stakes and the smaller setting of things. So
I recently found out that cozy sci-fi is a thing. And I feel like that's maybe what I write fits into. And I always thought the term was soft sci-fi versus hard sci-fi. Because even though I am big on science, I don't think I write hard sci-fi or am capable of it necessarily. But I'm never sure what the term cozy sci-fi is. And the only author I've heard that falls into that is Mike Chen, who does time travel. And I think his books are pretty cool. But you know, that's pretty much what I would write, and not necessarily time travel. The book I'm working on right now, editing, is actually a lot like First Do No Harm. It's really centered on health and bodily health, and where we are in the future with our surroundings and kind of the environment, mostly where our bodies are. And it's not like, well, it's a little bit kind of save the world in a way, but it's really, like you said, focusing on the person and character based and character driven. So maybe that's the difference.
Yeah.
I think that is, I think Lucia's definition was really good. I like Mike Chen. Was it Here and Now and Again, or Here or something?
Yeah, Here and Now and Then.
Here and Now and Then. Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Yeah, it was just great, and it really just kind of focuses on a small family story and this guy trying to get back to his family, and it was brilliant. You know, the science was kind of out the window and it didn't make any sense, but again, that's okay because he was telling such a good, sort of warm-hearted story, you know, big-hearted story, and it was just wonderful.
Okay, I'm going to jump in to read 2 more stories so we can get some more authors introduced here. The client's dressing room curtain opened and he exited. Wow, I had to acknowledge John Macbeth looked good. Even though the headache this man had triggered from the moment I met him this morning still boom, boom, boomed in my brain, the history professor wore his tights well.
Finley.
It is. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
I'm Finley Grant, and I write urban fantasy, paranormal romance, and time travel romance. This is a romance. I based it in because I'm lazy, I based it in the town that my time travel series is based in, which is 1400s Cromarty, Scotland, because I didn't want to do further research. So I just put it there. So the premise is that she is a time travel tour guide, and he has basically sold everything to afford this trip. He's a professor with very poor social skills, and he's in trouble with his job. So he needs to write this paper on medieval weaponry to try and save his job. And she's his tour guide to take him back to actually see the actual weapons in use. And she finds out there's more to him than just being a taciturn professor. So
I think that was efficient of you to use the research you had.
Smart.
It's honestly smart because I heard people say they worry about their books are too similar, but who reads a book and they're like, oh, I hope the author didn't write something similar. It's like, no, they want to see kind of, you know, so it's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah, the book I'm writing right now is so different from my Revolutionary War fantasy. I think I'm going to have to take a pen name because it's just too different. And when you read an author, you expect something similar. So, all right, here's another one. Ended up in the wrong century by mistake? Need help navigating unfamiliar customs, clothing, or currency? Accidentally caused a paradox that erased your own existence? Callie Anywhere is here with advice for all your time travel conundrums. Whose is it?
Stevens.
Yes.
I love this one.
That one kicks off book 3 too, because that one just rocked my world. It was awesome. So Stephen, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Steve. I I've been a fan of time travel for my whole life, ever since I first watched Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure when I was like 5. So ever since then, I've just been obsessed with it. All things time travel. I write time travel. I write other sci-fi stuff too. I even write things that aren't sci-fi. Not often. But mid last year sometime, on the site that shall not be named, I was getting ready to leave, and then I found out, wait, there's a whole community of time travel authors? How am I only just now finding out about this? And then I found out, oh, hey, they release anthologies. Oh, I hope they do another one. I hope they call for submissions. And they did. And I spent was working for, solid month and a half on my thing. And I'm going to get this. I had this whole big complicated thing planned out. And on the day of the deadline, I was no closer to finishing than I was when I started. And I'm thinking, this is just not going to work. And so I thought, okay, what else do I have? And went into my archives and, ooh, that was a cool idea. And I ended up writing Caliente when very quickly. Then it turned out that they had extended the deadline. But
Stephen, we knew we had traveled into the future. We had figured out that all of these things were going on with you, and that but we liked the story and we wanted it to be part of the anthology. So we made some adjustments, and there it is. That's one of the advantages. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how it seems like it would be an easy format, and I've tried writing this way, and it's not. What you did is very difficult. And it's the entire story is told through the back and forth of an advice column writing. And it's just because I know how hard it is to write that, it just blew my mind. Good story. There's so many stories in this anthology that just rocked my world. Yeah. Obviously, or we wouldn't be here. All right, I'm going to jump in with one more story and then we'll get back to some conversation. So, Joan froze for a moment, the rough scrape of cardboard against her knuckles enough to speed her heart rate. She did not pull it down, open it, and lose herself in the contents. It nagged at her, though, calling to her, keeping her from finding the blissful numb state she used to push through each day. Want festered behind her breastbone, a physical ache as she made the bed, ironed the now dry sheets, and tucked them away for another week.
It was Lucia's. Yeah. That was my favorite in that book, because it hit me at exactly the right time, and it was just excellent. I loved it. So that was, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm Lucia Green, and the seed for A Matter of Time was the idea that being successful in any kind of creative field, like writing, is partially about talent, but so much about being in the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. And there are people out there in the world, all over the place, who are hugely talented and have wonderful things to contribute, but they're so caught up in survival that they can't devote time to being creative, to writing or painting or sculpting. So what if you could give time to one of those people? What could happen? And that's where the idea of the story came from.
Yours was a lot of fun to work on too, because Lucia put up with a lot of comments from me and just questions and questions and questions. And it's such a beautiful story. Such a great story.
Thank you.
Okay, so how many authors, this is your first?
Kirsten, are you muted?
We lost you.
We lost you for a second. Still can't hear you. Nope.
I think she froze. Did we just want to talk about if this was our first? Because this was my first experience. I don't know.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, I've been in all three, but the first one was the first time when, this is actually someone accepting my stories.
This was my first ever published story. I have self-published a book now, but this was the first thing that I ever had picked up. So it was pretty exciting to be a part of that.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
I have one other story published in an anthology like 13 years ago, and one self-help story.
This is my first time being published in anthology or otherwise. The volume 1 was my first time being published.
Congratulations.
Good job.
yeah,
And
and
it
it
goes
was
to
great
show how many quality stories are
as
out
the
there that
as the
getting put out.
publisher. Sorry, Amanda, what were
I
you
want-
saying?
I said that it shows how many quality stories there are that so many publications are passing on.
My stories were the first and second I had published too in volume 2 and 3.
That's great.
Nice.
Yeah, and I was just saying, since I'm, I guess, the de facto publisher of these, that was one of the most exciting things once we started doing this, realizing that this was affording an opportunity for people who are just writing great stories. I think Amanda's absolutely right. There's so many great stories out there that, for whatever reason, are not, finding their way into the public view, right? And so to have an opportunity to publish people who it was their first story, or as Stephen said, maybe they had published something a long time ago, but then there was a big gap, so that was just really, really exciting to be able to bring those people's stories to light. And they're all just really terrific stories. I was going to say, one other thing I was going to say about Lucia's story is that it just kind of shows how broad, whether we call that cozy time travel or whatever we call it, how much you can do with time travel, and just anything. If you really care about the time travel, so Mike's story has to do with, a lost pet, and then Lucia's has to do with somebody who's overworked and needs to find time, and Julie's, for heaven's sake, has to do with a time traveling calzone, whatever. But I mean, that's the point, that you can insert it into anything if your heart's really in it, and that's really cool to me.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to all the stories that are coming out that had been seeded in these anthologies, like when Blue Skies becomes the full novel, and Macon, when your characters come on. I can't wait to see the full novels, to read them.
Yes,
Can you guys hear me now?
Finish your novels.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. So that's a great question that leads us into, how many of you do you think could take this short story and build it into a full novel, or it's somehow tied to a full novel?
Yeah, mine is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, mine is tied to my serials that I write. In fact, the one for the third was tied to the serials. The other two were just some independent writing projects in the first 2 volumes that I'd partly written already. The third one was basically taking the characters and using them in a completely different context. And I have ideas for other sequels if I ever get the current one finished.
My story in the first anthology is the Titanic time heist, which is a prequel to my Beryl Blue Time Cop series. I wrote it after I wrote the series, so it sort of came afterwards. And my story in the second anthology is The Suitcase, which is a sequel to the Beryl Blue Time Cop series. So don't read that one unless you've read the series, because you will be spoiled for pretty major stuff.
Okay.
But, read it because it's a mystery. You'll enjoy it.
I enjoyed it either way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I really enjoyed The Suitcase. I put your books on my wish list because I edited your story.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'll say, when I started writing Blue Skies for the first volume, I had no expectation that it would be anything outside of just that story. And then when I sat down to write a story for the later volume, I started with the idea that it would start from the exact same moment that Blue Skies starts from and follow a different character's path through the same event. And now I feel like I could probably do that with like 3 or 4 more characters at least, and see what other people are seeing and doing throughout this story. So it has potential to go anywhere. I don't know.
Yes.
I love that.
When I wrote Muse, I was going to write it for the first volume and just could not fit it in between editing and everything else. So it got kicked to the second volume. And I thought that was going to be it. But the world of the society, Antiquity Society, kind of stuck with me, so that when I wrote the one for the third story, which takes place 10 years later for one of the minor characters, it's really been growing for me, this idea of I need to write out this antiquity society and who they are and what the story is. So yeah.
And I have all sorts of more ideas to write. I want to write like an episodic novel with Kate's calzone and whatnot. But I've started some stuff, but I have a hard time working on multiple projects, so I'm working on something else right now, but I'll get there.
How many people are Go ahead, Catherine.
I said all in good time. Haha.
How many people are actually able to jump back and forth between projects? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I jump around as I do different serials and my day job and other stuff.
I have to jump between day job and writing like I imagine everybody else does.
Right.
Yeah. My day job is writing, but it's like boring writing.
Oh no. Does the day, for those of you who have the boring day job, because I'm guessing it's either copy editing or writing copy or stuff like that, does that help inform your skills or how you go about your writing process for writing fiction?
I work in IT.
Can I just jump in? Oh, sorry. I just want to say that for many, many years, I was a grants writer. And so that really, really, really toughened me up for rejection because, when you're writing grant proposals, you're sending it to get money from people. And there's a lot of rejection there too. So that was the fun part. So it helped me.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I was saying I work in IT. I'm actually a tech geek. So nothing I do helps me with my time travel historical stuff.
I'm retired, but go ahead, Nathan. Nathaniel.
Oh, sorry, I got a moment. I'm actually at my day job right now. I'm a kindergarten, 8th grade drama teacher. It's one of the things I do. I'm directing Mary Poppins Jr. And I worked in professional theater before then as an actor and director and producer. And absolutely playing with stories on stage has given me a lot of interesting perspectives on writing stories. And I think that definitely plays a big part to how I come up with stories and characters and things. So yeah, for sure. For me.
That's good.
And I wanted to
say I'm retired now, but when the call came out for stories for volume 2, I was discussing with my critique partners that I really wasn't sure what to write. And they said, well, write what you know. And so I had worked on hydroelectric projects as a professional, and dam failures were something we always worried about and did a lot of planning for and a lot of inspections. And so that story came straight out of, like, not the actual dam failure, but a lot of the technical work came right out of my career.
That one was great. I loved that one.
Oh,
I wanted to answer no for it, but I write angry letters all day, and my other Titanic Voyage is it's almost epistolary in tone because he's talking to someone else. So it's like, yeah, actually, that probably goes through. So, yeah.
Why do you write angry letters all day?
I work at a law firm, so.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's a fun job. It's not for everyone, but I enjoy it. So.
Wow. There's a lot of. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I teach high school French, and I assigned a project last marking period to write a short story in French, and occasionally you get a good one, but most of them were not so great. And I kept telling them, oh, it's great, to read stories. It's great to write stories. Everyone loves reading, yada, yada. And it just inspired me to go home and write and escape from my real job. So I guess it's an escapism.
That's great.
I do copywriting and SEO and that sort of thing. And it's mostly very boring, doesn't pay enough, all of that. But every once in a while, I'll get a topic that's really cool. And I'm like, you know what? That would make a good story.
Inspiration comes from all over.
That's right.
All right, I'm going to jump in with 2 more stories. Here we go. He greeted the pair of lions guarding the door, formidable survivors of 100 years of hail, gentrification, and Christmas lights. Everything else that had been lovely in the original build had been long ripped out and junk to convert the single family home into a family of singular units. The spicy scents of vintage tobacco remained fossilized in the wallpaper of Jeremy's room, which had originally been a smoking lounge. When he was riding a good high, he'd wave his dragon-shaped pipe, telling himself he was adding to the room's legacy of greatness.
That's Amanda's.
Yes.
And what can I just say before you go over to Amanda and have her talk about herself and her story? What I love about Amanda's stories is that they do sneak up on you. You cut, like, the time travel elements are very subtle and very sly, and it takes some time before you're like oriented to them. But then once you're in them, you're like, oh wow, that is so cool. So it's really different than a lot of stories that I've read.
Thank you. I love to think of a time travel story as making a puzzle box, and I want it to just fit in perfectly with no rough edges. And so when I go to write a time travel story, it's always because there's some kind of puzzle that I want to put together. And so my story in this book is called Borrowed Tomorrows, and it's just about a man who feels like life has left him behind, and then a fortune teller promises him a future of everything he ever wanted for a small subscription fee. And that's the premise.
Great description. Okay. Here's another one. Heading toward the exit, I shuffled past the brightly painted ponies. Many invited me to join them for a ride. I politely declined. My old body wasn't as agile as it had been years ago. Before leaving the carousel, I paused next to the dark horse. A plain black jumped on the second row. His eyes were wide with fright and his mouth open, exposing his teeth and tongue. He hadn't spoken to me yet, so I didn't know his name.
Kathy.
The dark horse.
Beautiful, beautiful story.
Well, I'm Kathy Small. I had started writing middle grade fantasy. I had written a fairy tale. I was working on my second book called The Magic Carousel, and which is a story of a little boy that gets a magic brass ring from his grandfather. And when he rides on the carousel, he goes on time travel adventures. All magic. I mean, I didn't try to explain how it happened. It was just a magic brass ring. And I was responding to Julie's time travel hashtags with my middle grade story. And then when Josh proposed an anthology, I thought, okay, well, I write middle grade. This is not going to fit. But I could take this up a notch if maybe I did what would be considered a prequel to the Magic Carousel, and that it was the grandfather who started with the magic brass ring. He'd had it a really long time, and took him to a place where I would never take a middle grade child. I would never put my child in this situation. And the more I thought about it, I knew I had the perfect setup. So the story of the dark horse is the grandfather has made a goal for himself to ride all 60 of the horses on the carousel where they live. And he's been on 59 of them, and there's one horse left. It's the dark horse. And the other horses are telling him it's not going to end well. So without giving the story away, I will tell you that a big piece of this story came from my grandfather's World War I diary. And so there's actually a lot of, I can't read this story without crying. I mean, and so to me, this is the most powerful thing I have ever written. And I still, even just thinking about it, it's very personal. So anyway, I was delighted to be in all 3 volumes, and thank you so much for everyone who made that possible.
I think we need more middle grade time travel. I mean, the Magic Carousel, which I've read the book, is also wonderful. And, Mikan has done, is working on things that are more middle grade time travel. I may be wrong. Maybe there's a lot of middle grade time travel already out there, but that's not my sense of things. And, I think it's just right. It's an opportunity for writers in that, for that age group.
Yeah,
I happen to know
the Magic Tree House.
I happen to know of a series of middle grade historical fiction that should really be out there in every school. Oh, where is it again? Oh,
that's right, Andrew. Yeah, yeah,
definitely, Andrew.
Yeah,
one of my biggest time travel inspirations is a middle grade time travel called Fog Magic by Julia Sauer. Does anybody know that book? It
No.
came out in, I mean, I read it, I'm old, so I read it, you know, a million times when I was like nine or 10. So came out, I think, in the 50s. And it's about a little girl. Takes place on the Maine coast, and a little girl who just ends up traveling in time. It's very kind of moody and sad in some places, and just like I was at 9. So perfect. But yeah, that was really that and the time tunnel, of course. But that was a big inspiration for me, was that book. You know, it was like just captured my imagination, and time travel was it. So yes, more middle grade time travels.
Yeah, I think just middle grade in general. As I go out and do book events, it's actually frightening how many young, you know, when these are 8 to 12-year-old, say when I ask them, you know, do you like reading? And the answer is no. They have gotten so addicted to computer screens and games and such that reading books is not high on their list. So I think, yeah, the more that we can have really good, exciting stories for kids, it is going to be real important to keep readers for the future.
My sense when I was, now I haven't been in the querying trenches since 2021, so I've not been looking for an agent for those people who don't speak literary world since 2021, but at least in 2021, the sense was that middle grade was something that publishers were backing off of and that agents were not therefore looking for. Does that still seem to be what's happening?
Yes, I was in a Barnes and Noble bookstore looking for the middle grade section, and it disappeared. Literally, they no longer have titles for middle grade. There's the picture book collection, and then there's, I forget what they called it, but it's young readers or something
Early
like that.
chapter books, yeah.
Well, with me, it's the opposite. My books were actually YA, dropping F-bombs, stuff like that. And lengthwise, they're all YA, but my publisher also wanted to grab the middle grade market too, like for the more advanced middle grade readers. So he made me take all the F-bombs, all the profanity, any drinking that happened in modern times. Any drinking in historical times is fine, but any drinking in modern times, and even since my protagonist is a teen male, his observations of females had to be toned down a bit to be milder. So I was actually reverse. It was YA, and I had to kind of smooth it out to be MGYA.
Oh, wow. That's so fascinating.
I have a middle grade, 2 middle grade readers, and I will say it's hard to find them books. Yeah. It's like a little graveyard out there, I think.
I have a 9-year-old, and we end up going back to a lot of classics because there's just not a lot of new stuff. So, yeah, if you know good things, send me recommendations.
Will do. Well, of course, I'd recommend my book.
Absolutely.
Right there, behind me, over the shoulder.
Now I know some things to look up.
And check out Fog Magic. I think it's still around.
Okay.
It was a Caldecott winner from what I remember.
Very cool. For some of our newer authors, what is something that you would maybe like to learn about the publishing industry or from your fellow authors here? Or is there a piece of wisdom somebody would like to share with our audience?
Well, I've given up on the publishing industry. I'm self-publishing.
Yeah. I've complained to many of you of my journey. Fenley in particular knows my whole story, but I was in the querying trenches for a very long time and entered all the contests I could enter. And I ended up having two agents at 2 different times, and all of my books, the Beryl Blue books, they were all sent around, and a lot of, possibly, I got really close to publication once or twice, and then eventually it all just kind of came crashing down. And so I just decided that, I turned 60, and that was like kind of an impetus for me to say, okay, that's it. And that's when I decided self-publishing was the way. So, and I haven't really looked back. I mean, the traditional publishing is still there, and you can always see if you can get something published with them. But I feel that with indie publishing, you have so much more control. Like with this anthology, it was like we put it together, and well, Josh put it together, but it was like there was a lot of control over exactly what was happening and what was going to be in it. Whereas with the traditional publishing, you obviously don't have the same amount of control. I had a friend who had a book that was published. It was a paranormal, like vampire-y kind of urban vampire thing. And it was great, but her cover was the worst cover I have ever seen. And it was the traditional publisher. So they're the ones who were in charge of doing that. So you really, there are some ups and downs. I mean, obviously you get better reach and you get into bookstores and things like that, but you don't have that kind of control.
I'll maybe just throw in a quick pitch too for the serial writing. Like I just publish everything in my blog. I've been doing it for a decade now. I don't have huge readership, and there's the problem of having to change blogs, like when WordPress goes kind of crazy, and I'm in the process of having to deal with that. But I mean, it is another way of getting things out there that's kind of neither one nor the other, serial writing.
And I think there's definitely, well, I know there's definitely this sort of stigma against self-publishing. I get it all the time now when I go to different book events, and I get asked inevitably by at least one person, is this self-published? Is it traditionally published? And I've had both. I've been traditionally published with a small press. I'm involved with a startup, and the experiences are so vastly different that it just kind of frustrates me that people look at traditional and think, oh, that's the only real thing. And sometimes it's not the better answer. And you wouldn't know because Josh hired professional cover artists. I have experience as an editor. Like, you would not look at this and think any of our stories were anything but professional.
Yeah, and the thing is, I've been around for a long time, and I just turned 60, by the way, just this past week. But yeah, thanks. It's kind of a weird new world. But the thing is,
happy birthday!
Yeah, thanks. There's so many different ways to do it, right? Greg is doing it serially. Some people are self-publishing. Some people are, including myself, are sort of doing hybrid, still seeking traditional markets for my work, but then also doing some self-publishing. There's just a million ways to do it. And what I don't like is when anybody says, and I'm not saying anybody in this room is saying it, but when anybody says either traditional is better, or you'll hear people say the only way to go is self-publishing. It just depends on the author, right? Different authors will make different choices. And so far as I'm concerned, they're all fine. As long as you're doing what you love and you're getting your words out there, who am I to judge how you're doing it?
One author,
I agree 100%.
I heard the one author, Leanna Rapier, I believe it was, she likened indie publishing to like a hole-in-the-wall restaurant. So if you get a traditional published, it's like a chain restaurant, it might be great. It's, it's kind of baseline what it is. An indie book may be total garbage, may be the best thing you've ever had. And so there's not the vetting, but it might be actually way better than what you would have gotten traditional. So that's how she's taught it. I like that.
That's a great analogy. I always like to point to The Martian. Everybody knows that book now. Matt Damon starred in it as a film, but that was self-published before it was discovered by an agent and then sold to a big house. And I think it just goes to prove that there's so much good literature out there on every side of the publishing scale. So.
I heard that Legends and Latte also was self-published and then was picked up.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Yeah, there's a lot of really neat examples out there where just, the author went out and did it themselves first, and somebody said, well, wait a minute, we could take you somewhere different with that. So, all right, let's fill in some more authors here. Can't change the past. The only rule Fred hadn't broken since he'd begun his life of time crime. History couldn't be changed, he said. A person's fate was fixed, their destiny set. Marina suspected he followed that philosophy mostly to protect his skin. He'd stolen the bauble from Timescope Inc., the massive time tourism conglomerate that held iron-fisted control over all things time travel. A daring move that had put a large target on Fred's back. Any blips he caused in the timeline could alert the company's security force and lead them to him and to Marina.
I think that's me.
Yes. You're not supposed to get your own story.
Well, I did already say all about the time scope and everything, but yeah, that's me. So sorry, I jumped the gun.
No,
I got
that's
excited.
okay. That's so funny. I did not realize until you said that was a prequel to.
Well, you know, it has the same technology and the name of the company from the Beryl Blue series, but not the same characters. Although I'm kind of toying with an idea for a fourth Beryl book, and the characters, some of the characters in Titanic Time Heist may end up in the fourth book. The fourth book would.
I want to know what happened there.
Book would involve the Great Molasses Flood and the Spanish Flu. So in Boston.
Cool.
I don't know.
See, but this is the cool thing about time travel. No character ever dies, right? So you create a character and, you know, they're not gone. They could just, you know, you could just go back. You could do a prequel. You could have some kind of time thing that happens, whatever. So yeah, once you've got that story, go with it. You know, keep coming back to them.
Okay, we've got another selection.
So
Oh, go ahead.
Am I supposed to introduce myself, or have I already?
Go ahead.
Okay. Janet Ray Stevens. I write mostly historical mysteries. I write time travel. Obviously, I love it very much. But I also I call myself a genre hopper, and so I write sci-fi and some paranormal and supernatural stuff too as well. And I write short stories and novel-length fiction. So.
I like that, genre hopping. Gotta hold on. That's a good phrase. I like that.
Dedicated genre hopper, or as we say around here in Massachusetts, genre hopper.
Nice. And are they all published under Janet Ray Stevens?
Yes, and my short stories are also under Janet Ray Stevens. I have written a bunch of short mysteries that have been published in other anthologies. So. But I was very excited to actually find a time travel anthology that was being published, because that was just the best. So thank you, Julie.
I don't think it's Rushmore.
And thank you again, Julie. I know we'll probably talk about research, but I did a lot of research on the Titanic thing, but then I just sent it to Julie, and she just like, you know, no. And she cleaned it all up for me. So that was very helpful.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, another one for us. The world was dark and cold, filled with a cacophony of unrecognizable sounds that echoed and overlapped. An incessant high-pitched beeping sound, or maybe more like a chirping, cut through the chaos and hammered away at Eddie's ears. I have ears? So this is it. This is what being dead is.
Nah.
It's Blue Skies.
Yeah, Eddie gives that away.
Yeah, that's me. I was looking up on stage and suddenly heard that in the background on my earpiece. And wait, I wrote that. Hi. I'm on the call right now with all the other authors. Say hi. This is my daughter, Alex. She's in Mary Poppins Jr.
Hi.
So, okay, I think you got an entrance to make, right? When you're off stage, you can have a snack. Okay, I'm sorry. I got to find a quieter place. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt. And I'm in the middle of rehearsal. We open in 2 weeks. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So I wrote Blue Skies in Volume 1 and From Now On in Volume 3. And I just started writing again just a few years ago for the first time since college. I have the daughter that you just met, and we also have a son who's 7 now. And at the time, I was doing part-time teaching, and my son started preschool, and I suddenly had 2.5 days free every week, and I thought I should try to take up writing again. And so I did, and I started writing what turned into a middle grade novel that I'm trying to get published right now called The First Kid on Mars, about kids who move to Mars. And while I was kind of finishing up that, I saw Julie's hashtag. Well, I didn't see Julie's hashtag. I happened to stumble into it right before she created it. And she posted something on that website saying, I'm thinking about starting a time travel authors hashtag. Who's interested? Who's a time travel author? And I said, I haven't written a time travel book, but I'm going to write one in the future. So I kind of already did. So can I play along? And she said, sure. And I think the first prompt I think was just simply share a line from your book. And that first day I remember vividly, I like sat down, I closed my eyes, I imagined myself in the future walking up to my bookshelf and picking this book off the shelf, opening up a page and looking down and seeing what line had been written there. And I did that every day for like months and months, and slowly started to get to know this book that existed in the future, but I didn't know yet. And it turns out it's a really cool book. I'm in the middle of really writing it in the present now, called 17 Minutes of Rain, about kids who time travel from 2016 Chicago back to 1984 Detroit and back, and bring with them the rain delay that helps the Cubs win the World Series in 2016. I know that. I also know that there are 8th graders who get there who they have to combine their science fair projects, and they accidentally create a time machine. So that was a really fun journey to find this book, and really got me interested and excited about writing time travel. And then when Josh brought up the idea of, do we want to publish an anthology of stories, I thought, for sure, I would love to. And then I saw a completely different story, a story of a 50th birthday party skydiving party that goes wrong, and one of the characters, his instructor, has a heart attack, and he's got to figure out how to survive with her being dead, and then he ends up dying. But before he dies, he gets suddenly transported into the future, and then he has to save the world. It's a short story version of it. And so that was a lot of fun to write. And then for the other volume, I thought from now on just suddenly burst to life when I thought, what if I consider the whole series of from the daughter's perspective and follow the path that she takes through the same journey. And then it became a lot of fun trying to match up the two stories beat by beat, scene by scene, so that they go through the same time loops in each story from those two different perspectives. So that was a lot of fun to put together. So yes, those are my fun two stories of my journey of being a time travel author. And so I would also say thank you to Julie especially for allowing me to play in such a weird way. And neither of us knew what it was going to grow into, and it's pretty awesome.
And thank you, Nat, for taking time out of your rehearsal, because I know how much work that is, and we appreciate you jumping in and out as you can.
A lot of good coverage.
Nat, I wrote 2 10-minute plays. They were Christmas plays that were produced on stage at my little local theater in December. It was the most amazing thing to actually see or listen to actors performing words I wrote. So
isn't that awesome?
Yeah, it is. It was awesome.
And I think I was saying earlier, my experience as an actor and a director, when I'm writing dialogue, I will say it out loud in the character's voice and see if it feels right or if something else occurs to me. I think that experience of hearing somebody read or reading it out loud yourself with some emotion can be a really powerful thing. Oh, they're about to be stuck in time.
Cute. Thank you so much, Nat. So to all of our authors, how many of you have been sort of like lifelong writers where you've just always at least, dabbled in it or? Okay.
Yep.
Am I the only one out?
I don't believe that. What?
Yeah, no, I guess I wrote like a little bit of fan fiction as a kid and showed it to my mom, and she was like, okay. And I kind of liked writing as a school assignment, but that was it. Like, I wasn't really a writer until I just said, I wonder if I could write a novel. So yeah. Yeah. So I'm always fascinated by people who always kind of wrote or knew how they wanted to be writers, or what got you guys started on your journey?
I had a college English professor who was very existentialist, philosophy driven. And he said, if you are a writer, you don't wait for someone to tell you you're a writer. You just call yourself a writer and live it out. And that really stuck with me.
That's a great philosophy. Yeah. I've been writing since I was 8 or 9, just scribbling away. My mother was a huge reader. She read easily a book a day. And I think I started writing to get her attention maybe. So, I just decided I wanted to do what, I was a reader too. So I wanted to do what the people in the books could do. So I started writing from day one. I always noodled with it, until I sat down one day and said, okay, honestly, I'm going to do this for publication. And took a while to get there, though.
I came at it.
Yeah, well, that's.
Go ahead, Gregory.
I was gonna say, I came at it partly through nonfiction. Like I used to keep a diary and journals and things like, go on vacation, then I'll write about it after. I mean, eventually, once I was in middle school, I think that was when I wrote my first little time travel story, and I did do some fiction stuff too. But yeah, there's always been that component in there as well. Like I've even written reviews for the Time Travel Nexus online of time travel comics, time travel anime, Steins Gate, plug. And that's sort of been part of this as well. It hasn't just been the fiction.
And I'm like Janet. I think I was 8 or 10 in that age range. I loved books and I always wanted to be an author. That was my goal. 2 goals: own a horse and be an author. And I'm living my dream. I got both of them.
Aww.
I always wanted to be an author too. And I wanted a lot of different careers. And I just knew I would somehow fit in an author into them. And I got this fortune cookie when I was in college. And it said, "You are a lover of words. Someday you will write a book." And it's true. So I have that taped to the top of my laptop.
Hey, that's great.
Awesome. My husband has the worst luck with fortune cookies. He has had at least a half dozen in the last 2 years that have had no fortune whatsoever, which kind of freaks me out because it's always him. Like the rest of the family will get something.
Oh, that's cruel luck.
I know, right? Terribly. Do you
I feel
guys?
like there's a story in that.
There is. I haven't found it yet, but there's definitely a story in that. I don't know if it's a horror or if it's a comedy or.
He can write his own future, so everyone else is locked in, but he can do whatever.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I like that attitude. Yeah, Julie's onto something, definitely. All right, so I'm going to read our last 3. The timeline that had once existed without her, whatever it might have looked like, had been wiped out. They were overwriting it now. The old timeline might have been better. She wondered about that sometimes. Short but sweet.
Should I say something if no one does?
Is it Gregory?
It is Gregory.
I recognize that one, yeah. I wasn't sure if I'd recognize my own writing, but there we go. I guess, quick little intro of me. Yeah, Gregory Taylor, middle initial B to distinguish me from apparently a bunch of other Gregory Taylors out there. I still got to fix the Amazon page. But I live in Ontario, Canada.
Oh, no way. What part?
Ottawa, actually, the capital.
Oh, I'm in Oshawa, the east city
there we go.
outside Toronto.
There we go. Yeah, but I grew up down in that area there.
I thought I was the only Canadian. That's why I'm asking.
No, there we go. Hey, solidarity. But yeah, and yeah, I'm sort of a parent first, and then I have my other job, and then I do the writing on the side, mostly serial writing and installments. But I hooked in to the time travel authors from the start. I've been in every anthology. I picked that excerpt from the 3rd one because that was the first one I actually wrote for the purposes of the stories. Like the other 2, I'd had half written stories or mostly written stories, and I just kind of polished them up and said, "What do you think of this?" This one for the 3rd anthology was the first one I actually wrote cold, using the characters that I had in my serial. The first one's out there. I'm still writing the sequel. I've been writing it now for 5 or 6 years, and eventually, once the time loops back, I'll be able to finish the edits. But yeah, I guess my quick plug for the String of Pearls. The protagonist uses their power to leap through time to try and help a stranger from derailing their own past. Except the timeline resists changes. So what can be done about the ensuing predestination paradox? Person has to go back. So yeah, that's where that one is fitting into everything.
And Gregory was great too, because you were another author where you and I went back and forth and talked a lot and really like worked together. It was a really great hands-on process that I really enjoyed. So thank you.
Well, and thank you. Yeah, no, you improved that tons. Is like, why don't you expand more on this? I'm like, oh yeah, I should. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay.
Can I also say your title? I just love the pun of the title.
Thank you. Yeah, funny enough, I came up with the character name first, and then the title name followed. So yeah.
Perfect.
That's cool. Okay. There were hundreds of other photos of Tara around the lab, covering the walls, on the workbench, at his desk, but this was his favorite. None of the others captured her like this one. Her blue eyes sparkled with life, and there was an infectious joy to her smile that made his heart melt. He still remembered how beautiful she looked that day so long ago when he'd snapped the photo. This picture, above all others, was what had driven his work for the last 30 years, when lesser men would have given up.
Andrews.
That's Andrews.
For her.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm Andrew, the other Canadian. And yeah, that was for her. So I write historical fiction, time travel historical fiction. I had 2 books out already in my series that were tried published. And my publisher said, you have to build a social media following. I'm a guy in my 50s. I don't want to do social media. I hate it. I didn't even own a phone till 2 years ago. Because, as mentioned, I work in IT. I'm stuck with multiple screens all day long. The last thing I want is another computer in my freaking hand. So, anyways, I got a bunch of accounts on Instagram, Facebook, and the evil website that shall not be named. Started posting, found Julie's hashtag, started, responding at all you fine people, and I ended up being invited to the second anthology because the first one was already done and gone by the time I actually came onto the scene. And I was originally thinking of doing a prequel to one of my books, but I thought, oh, who's going to know the characters? And it's like, a prequel could even be like, I might actually want to do a full-on book. So I thought, okay, I've been in this kind of YA, toned down to middle grade sort of genre. Why not do something fun? So that's where For Her came out. It was just kind of me kind of leaping out of the middle grade world for a bit and just having fun with the character. And so my story is about a brilliant scientist who has dedicated his life to undo the untimely death of his true love. And now, after decades of, struggle, he's ready to leap back in time and save her. So that's my story. Oh, and by the way, speaking of the Blue Sky, I know a whole bunch of us have moved over to Blue Sky, where Time Travel Authors hashtag is doing great. I've also created a starter pack for Time Travel Authors, so that if you join in, you can find everybody else really quickly. You just go follow all and poof, you're now following everybody else. So if you migrate to Blue Sky, find me, Andrew Varga Author, and just message me and say, add me to the starter pack. And then you'll find everybody else instantly.
Oh, that's great. I just joined like yesterday, or 2 days ago.
Yeah,
Great
like I
to
said,
know. Thanks.
just ping me and I'll give you the path to everybody else.
That's awesome.
I'll just throw in a quick plug for Mastodon as well, which is the other social media. That's the one I'm mostly on, Mastodon. You can find us with the hashtag there too.
For those of you who are watching us, the recording of this through YouTube, if you go down below, you will see a listing of all of the authors here, their short stories, in which volume you can find them, and their website. So I would please encourage all of you to check out all of our authors, visit their websites, learn more about them, see what they've written, find them on social media and give them a follow. That's one of the best ways you can support an author, even if you don't have that extra spending cash to buy all of our books, though we would like you to, of course. Please do, follow and comment and have fun with us through all the different social media, because that is a huge support to everybody here. So, all right, we have another story. Before another thump of his heart had run its course, the goddess was consumed by the fiery ball. It exploded into thousands of stars, flooding the room with their brilliance. hovering, dangling, unmoving, while the dust on the floor, the herbs on his table, and the linen surrounding Anon's thin frame were flung aside from the shock. Glorious. Oh, by all that was holy, it was glorious. In those mere seconds when he felt himself caught upon the divide between life and beyond, he forgot his vow to restrain his breathing.
That's yours.
It's yours. So
Can I say something? Because I know we're probably, before Kristen introduces herself, we're probably getting, winding down perhaps. I want to make sure everybody understands, everybody in this group, but also more importantly, everybody watching this, wherever you may be watching this, that Kirsten has been an absolute workhorse. These volumes, I mean, it may have been my brainchild, but she's been the one who really put in the hard work to read everybody's stories, go through multiple edits. They were all great stories to start with, but she certainly strengthened them as a good editor does. So kudos and bravo. And then had time to write 2 stories of her own as well to include in the volumes. I just don't know how. So anyway, absolutely essential to what we've done. So thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. It's been really awesome getting to know all of you. And like I said, I love meeting authors from all over the world and just seeing different perspectives and hearing all your different stories and your processes. And I always learn new things from other authors. So thank you guys for trusting me with your work. So my story is about old Potter Anon, who discovers that the thief of his precious creations is a goddess. But he questions what his intentions are for him, left hidden in the colorful depths of an omen. It's set in the Isle of Samos in 5th century Greece. I knew absolutely nothing about ancient Greece other than some of the basic mythology we learn in school, and just it and its sequel in volume 3, which my own title is escaping me right now, were just a really lovely way for me to express how important I think it is to protect art and protect history and to keep it available for everybody. So thank you guys. All right, we are wrapping down. So I think let's find one more question that I'm going to put to the group to bring us actually, we had a show and tell. So we'll wind down with that, especially because I just heard it was somebody's birthday not that long ago. Everybody was asked to bring a beverage that shows part of your writing process. So everybody has something. Let's see what you brought. How many people have coffee?
Oh, yeah.
Tea?
Oh, that's me.
Water? Something stronger. Okay.
I have lemonade. Lemonade, no caffeine.
Lemonade, there we go. And I see some Mountain Dew keeping Nat powered there through rehearsal. So that's awesome. So everybody, congratulations to all of you. You did it. You are brilliant. And it has been such a joy. And I'm so glad we were able to do this. Happy birthday, Josh. Thank you for this wonderful idea, to Julie for this hashtag. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. We are so pleased that you were able to join us. If you leave a comment below, if you have a question for anybody, let me know, put the comment down below. I'll get the questions to the author so that they can respond to you. And everybody, thank you so much. We will see you throughout time.